Hey, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Roto Street Journal, paving your way to fantasy glory, acting as your lead blocker for fantasy excellence, and all the good stuff. Just all the good stuff, none of the bad stuff. I, of course, am your host, Nat the Truth Jones, and we are in episode 5 out of 8, breaking down the 8 divisions of the NFL. We did the NFC last week, starting on the AFC this week with the AFC West. Some pretty great stuff in that division and some steaming piles of shit as well. Joining me, as always, the Wolf of Roto Street himself, coming off, what is it, 14th bachelor party of the year?
It's, I think I'm up to at least 5 now, and it's my liver, my wallet, everything is getting bludgeoned, Nat, but this is the last one I have. I got a wedding in September. I think that's it for 2020. Oh, no, I got a couple weddings in November. There's a shitload. Yeah, it's been wild. But took a good day of recovery yesterday. Feeling great today. And as you said, this is like a really interesting division because there's a couple teams where it's all first rounders that you want. And then there's a couple teams where I don't really want anybody on them. So it's going to be a fun one to break down for sure, getting in the AFC here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I had my draft right after we did the NFC South. I think on Thursday, I actually had my auction draft. Some stuff went really well. I made, I'd say, 2 mistakes in the draft. You always kick yourself for mistakes afterwards. I mean, literally just, brain fart mistakes. Like I wasn't paying attention and it was my turn to nominate. And I ended up getting Dallas Goedert for $1, who I had absolutely no. Right. And paying $1 is no big deal.
$1 is what
but it was a roster spot.
Right.
I mean, there's guys on waivers that I'd way rather have right now. That was a mistake. And that was probably the biggest mistake. And also I should have gone more all in, not all in, but I should have been willing to bid more on one of the San Francisco running backs. I regret that. Yeah.
I love those guys after we broke them down. I remember you told me Deontay Johnson went for like $7 as well. I was like, ooh, that's a miss right there if you didn't get him at that price tag. But overall, your team was a monster. We'll talk about them on a later podcast. Yeah, I love what you came up with for sure.
Yeah, well, one thing I did is I went all in on CMC, like you said, and so I'm gonna drive that sports car around until it breaks down. We'll see what happens.
Hopefully, it will never break down on you. We'll see.
Right. All right. We're gonna get into the Broncos. We're gonna start with the Denver Broncos. I'm a guy who is traditionally a Broncos fan. I'm an Elway Broncos fan, which was a long time ago. It is pretty hard to get excited about these Denver Broncos, in that I'm really not interested in anybody on the team unless I'm getting them at an extreme. There's a couple guys I wouldn't mind taking flyers on if I got a real deal on them. But let's start at quarterback. At least at the time I was writing this, which was yesterday, you don't seem to have any real sense about who's going to be the guy in Denver. You have them taking close to even shares of a not that impressive 4,100 yard, 26 touchdown, 14 picks aerial pie. You got Drew Lock, who you've got projected at your QB 35 and Bridgewater at 34. You got Lock at 28 on your big board. I'm surprised you even have him that high. I mean, you're not touching either of these guys, right?
No, I don't see much value to going in on either. I will say, the Broncos have now put up 35 and 30 points in back-to-back preseason games, so somehow this offense is flying all over the place in the preseason. We haven't seen that happen in the regular season in quite some time, and I'm not expecting it to. I will say, though, Bridgewater gained a little bit of ground this weekend. He's at this point completed about, I think, 73% of his passes and thrown 3 touchdowns, led scoring drives every time he's been in there. So Bridgewater has been pretty impressive. Drew Lock came out swinging last week. Didn't show those fireworks as much this last week. So it seems like it's still going neck and neck here without any clarity. That's why I have them split half and half. But even if one clearly takes over, a flyer at best in the late rounds of your draft. I do like Shermer as a play caller. As you can see, right a little bit below league average in plays of -11. But as a historical play catcher, Shermer has been a pretty good one there. So I'm not saying I'll completely write them off if one of them just separates and is the clear-cut guy all year. But even then, I don't want them that much now. There's not much to talk about with these quarterbacks.
Right. I am going to avoid them like the plague. And I even kind of like Teddy just as a guy and everything, but I'm not interested at all in his fantasy production this year. All right, let's move on to running backs. You have a similar situation at the running back. You've got Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, obviously one guy young, one guy nearing the end of his career. So you can take that into consideration, but you have him close to splitting carries again. You got Williams, last I saw, for 201 and 945 yards, 8 touchdowns, another 27 catches for $167, couple touchdowns. Then you got Gordon, 178 carries, 748 yards, 6 touchdowns. I hope that's all still correct and like insignificant receiving work. That's good enough for 23 for Williams, projected 40 for Gordon. And then on the big board, you got Javonte at 22 and you got Gordon at 33. That's another backfield I really don't want anything to do with.
For the most part, I agree. Although I do love Javonte as a player.
I do too.
And, you know, typically in that range of running backs, he goes around like late 5th, early 6th. Sometimes he'll even fall to 7th. By then, I hopefully have 2 running backs. And at that point, I don't mind taking a stab at Javonte because if he did ever take over as a full-down horse, I think you're looking at an RB1 because of how much I love this guy. He broke PFF's metric for broken tackles per like handoff. He was insane as a player. The thing is that he can't even separate right now in the preseason with Melvin Gordon not playing. They're still rotating in Royce Freeman. It's about 55% Javonte and then 45% Freeman with the starters, and Freeman playing all the third downs. Like I was hoping, to be honest, that they just give Williams that entire 3-down workload, see what he can do. That's typically what Pat Shurmur does with his backs. You think of Steven Jackson, you think of Dalvin Cook, you think of Saquon Barkley as a rookie, all monster workhorses. So there is that upside in a Pat Shurmur offense. But why is Royce Freeman working in at all in the preseason? Why don't you see what this guy Javonte can give you before Melvin Gordon comes back? If he can't separate for true 3-down work this early with nobody else out there, when's that going to happen? So I am a little bit worried there about this backfield. I do think, though, Javonte is worth that stab if you have 2 good guys in place. You might have a nice bridge like Raheem Mostert a little bit later to get to him because there is that league-winning talent with him. I'm just a little bit nervous he'll never truly separate in this depth chart.
Javonte, for whatever it's worth, went for $10 in my auction draft.
About fair. I'd say about a fair price there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was slightly more than I was willing to pay at the time. Now I kind of wish I had done it. But there's other guys I wanted more than him that I didn't get. So anyway. All right, now the receivers. You have 2 pretty good receivers at the top of the board, but it's tough to get super excited about either of them. That's a real recurring theme with this Broncos team, at least for me. Tough to get super excited about any of these guys. You got Courtland Sutton and you got Jerry Jeudy. Until recently, you had Sutton as, slightly preferring him over Jeudy. Recently, you've changed your mind on that and have flipped him a little bit. I'm going to tell you the stat lines. I'm not going to say the rankings because the projections had not updated the last time I went in there. So you can just kind of try to explain yourself on these without me giving you the rankings. You got Sutton for 71 catches on 973 yards, 6 touchdowns, 114 targets. Jeudy, you got 74 catches, 1,036, 6 touchdowns on 125 targets. So, I mean, pretty similar target share, pretty similar numbers, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real true 1A, 1B. And at their prices, that would suggest to me Sutton's the better fantasy investment. But the reason I've flipped them lately is, one, Sutton's been recovering a little bit slowly from that knee. They're saying he's finally looking like he's back to that true all-pro self. If that's the case, they might flip again. But I think Jeudy might be talented enough, even at 100%, might be with Sutton. I think Jeudy might be good enough to hold him off. He's just, even last year as a rookie, the routes were insane. It was just the drops that would drive you maddeningly crazy. After he'd be wide open, it would hit him not often in the hands because his quarterback sucked, but still he had some catchable balls he really should have reeled in that he didn't last year. So I ultimately thought at first Sutton would be the clear-cut target hog. But, man, Jeudy through the preseason, of every report is he's unguardable, whether that's in joint practices. We've seen it in preseason games after the catch, at the catch point, all over the field, both deep, intermediate. I think Jeudy is the alpha here. I really do think he's going to take over. And it's easy to bet on a talent who, he had a couple drops, a little bad case of those dropsies, but still coming in, I loved Jeudy. I still think he already as a sophomore runs some of the best routes in the league. And so the drops being one of the least, sticky stats year to year, I think that'll improve for Jeudy. And he's now become a guy like round 6 after those T. Higginses, those Brandon Ayuks. I think Jeudy's a amazing wide receiver 3. Become somebody that I hadn't really been targeting much to now somebody that's on when that investing guide comes out later this week, he's on that list as a wide receiver 3. I'm definitely targeting in that round 6 range for sure.
Real quick, before we get into the tight end, we forgot to, hawk the show at the beginning and ask you to give us a thumbs up. Whatever platform you're watching on, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, or anything else. I don't know. We're like an octopus. Our tentacles are just, going out and everything. So if we're on other platforms I don't know about, I apologize. But anyway, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, subscribe, give us a review, say something nice. We'd appreciate
all that stuff means the world. And before we move on to the tight ends now, I did want to mention KJ Hamler has now scored back-to-back preseason weeks, has that Deshaun Jackson-like deep speed. So I really like that guy in best ball. I do think it's going to be similar to Deshaun Jackson. It's tricky to project week to week when you can slip him in there. But if there was ever an injury to Jeudy or Sutton, I think Hamler could really step up, and he's become a late-round sleeper that wasn't on my radar much entering this year, has really shot up the board because of his strong preseason play, looks fully healthy, ready to go. He's connected with both quarterbacks now for scores. I like KJ Hamler a lot as a late-round sleeper.
All right, for tight end for Denver, and this is the one guy who seems to be, he's probably a legit fantasy starter. Noah Fant at tight end, 69 catches, 773, 6 touchdowns, getting over 100 targets. So, up there in the range, at least, of Jeudy and Sutton as far as targets. A big guy, strong athlete. You've got him as your tight end 11 on the projection board, and you actually like him a little higher at 9 on the big board.
Yeah, I just betting on the athleticism on the big board is where the ceiling is really high for Fant because of his profile, just a freak athlete. They're saying they're using him on a more diverse route tree this year, that he's picked up the game a lot better. It seems to be ready for that really true breakout is what everything says. My only question is, okay, so where do those targets come from? If I really like Jeudy, if I think Sutton is a true alpha when he's healthy, and the report suggests he is, that leaves him at best third on the target totem pole for an aerial pie, as we said at the top. Isn't that delicious overall? They are going to want to win games with their defense by bleeding clock. So ultimately, I like Fant. I just don't love Fant. I like the player a lot. I wish, if you put him on the Chiefs, if Kelce was her or something, that he could go crazy. It's just not the best situation, I think, for fantasy purposes. But yeah, definitely in my top 12, towards the bottom of that. Certainly in every week, tight end 1 because of just the ability and the upside there. But yeah, just not a guy that I'm like going out of my way to.
I mean, as you said, it's not the ideal fantasy situation for him. Is this the ideal fantasy situation for anybody?
No, not really. Honestly, right. I just think if Bridgewater does take over, that would definitely help Jeudy and Courtland Sutton in terms of I forget the exact rankings, but in terms of accurate passes and not, just getting the wide receiver the ball. And I'm not even just comparing completion percentage. There's the stats about who could produce more fantasy worthy wide receivers. Bridgewater sustained 3 of them over there in Carolina, whereas Drew Lock struggled to keep any of them competent last year. So I would much rather see Bridgewater under center for fantasy purposes and specifically for Jeudy. So it still remains one of those situations you have to monitor the rest of the preseason.
So I felt like that was kind of like going through one of those documentaries you see on Netflix or HBO that's just really boring. It's about some sort of corporate structure and just something that where you tune out right away. This next one is much more exciting. Kansas City Chiefs, you got a lot of guys. There's a lot of scoring to go around here, a lot to be excited about. Let's start with Pat Mahomes. I'll just spoil it for you. He's your QB1 on both lists.
Bold.
Right. 424 attempts, 424 completions, 640 attempts, over 5,200 yards, 47 touchdowns, 10 picks, and a not insignificant 57 rushes for 285 and a couple touchdowns. You have to think that would be higher if they weren't so paranoid about him getting hurt. He certainly could rush more than that if he wanted to. Big numbers. I mean, is there really anything to say? Other than just he's awesome.
Yes, that. And I think the only thing to add is the fact they've improved this offensive line. Now, we haven't seen it yet through the preseason, them really gel. He's been under a little bit of duress already. So I don't want to sit here and say it's guaranteed the line's going to be so much better. But you look at what they did. Orlando Brown, great trade acquisition. Joe Thuney, as a Patriots fan, you can't ask for a more reliable guy, whether in the run or the pass games. Drafting Mac at center, just great, all-around improvements across the offensive line. They were ranked I think bottom 5 last year. Now in the preseason, they're projected to be in the top 15 units. So that's a big leap. When you think about a guy like Pat Mahomes, you give him of course, protection helps all quarterbacks, but you give a guy like Mahomes an extra second or two, and a guy like Tyreek on the outside an extra second or two. That's the difference between like a 5-yard check down to the running back and an 80-yard bomb down the field. So that's why I have him throwing for the most yards of his career, potentially at 47 touchdowns. We've already seen him do 50, so that could be an underestimate here if this line truly gels and holds him up for more time to get downfield. But yeah, there's really not much else to say other than this guy is a god, a freak player that we haven't seen maybe ever. So I cannot wait to see what he does if he gets better protection.
All right, this one maybe not as exciting, but probably a little more to unpack. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 223 carries, a little over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, 37 receptions for 307, 2 touchdowns. In this offense, the running back has a ton of value. And we agree that Clyde has got a lot of potential, definitely a strong runner and all that. But you kind of like Mckinnon, which maybe is lessening your CEH appeal. Is that right?
That's kind of what's happened since the start of the preseason. I was all in on Clyde mid-second round. I mean, last year we were clearly all in on him mid-first round. It just didn't pan out. But Andy Reid has been so fantasy-friendly, from Brian Westbrook to Jamal Charles to LaShawn McCoy. I mean, there has just been fantasy monster after fantasy monster. I think it's something around the lines of 74% of his running backs have been true top 12 guys, and like 62% of those were top 5 guys. I mean, it is a very fantasy-friendly offense for the backs, but they're already talking about Jerick McKinnon eating into that receiving workload. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a high ankle sprain in this game, and he was logging all the snaps with the starters before that ankle sprain, so there was some promising signs, but that can't help the coaching staff feel great about using this guy as a true every down monster. Daryl Williams was sneaking in there for short yards and goal line work last year, and you know how cute they get at the stripe. So it's kind of crazy to project like an offense that I think will lead the league in points, only giving their top running back 7 touchdowns on the ground and 2 through the air. But you've seen how many times last year where it was like Travis Kelce gets an end around score, the fullback gets like a little shovel pass score. They just never want to give it to Clyde at the goal line. So I'm not going to project him for a high touchdown share. And then if he's also having receiving work nibbled at by Jerick McKinnon, well, now you're losing 2 of the most valuable sources of fantasy points right there. If he becomes just another between the 20 guys, which we saw last year, it's like between the 20 guys and a Chiefs offense is more valuable than most, but still kind of purgatory for running backs. So yeah, I'm a little bit lower than him. He's kind of fallen to 3rd round, the top of 3rd round on my big board, but not quite as high as I was just a few weeks ago.
And projections, you got him as your RB20. You actually like him more than your projections. I think you got him at 14 on the big board, amongst running backs, not overall. Worth mentioning, before we get too excited about Jerick McKinnon, how many times has Jerick McKinnon been the death of us?
Yeah. And death might be a little bit of an exaggeration because it's like you're
I don't know, man.
Rounder. But yes, we've fallen for this guy, Nat, too many times. Like
we had him as a second round guy. 3-4 years ago
when he first got to
San Francisco.
San Fran, Kyle Shanahan.
You loved that guy.
Of course.
I was all in too. I was like, this is the guy. And
that was a lot of a bet on Kyle Shanahan's offense as much as it was on McKinnon's play.
It has soured me towards him forever.
And it should. It deserves to be. But this is the thing with him is this is the lowest we've seen him drafted in the last, whenever. He's in the most explosive offense he's ever been in, looking as the best pass catching back. And now you have injuries to Helaire, and Daryl Williams picks up a concussion. Sure, McKinnon's been working in as the 3rd back. This is potentially opening up the door for him to carve out some meaningful value in a Pat Mahomes offense, especially if you have like Mahomes in your best ball leagues or whatever, and you want to stack up him at the running back position. Would not be shocked at all to see Jerick McKinnon haul in 4, and that's what I have him for.
Right.
265 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a little bit of a bane to Helaire owners and carve out a potentially meaningful enough role for himself. Yeah.
All right. It doesn't sound crazy when you say it like that. All right, Tyreek Hill. Let's talk about monster numbers here. You got him for 96 catches, over 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns. That's on 147 targets. Of course, you got the additional 16 rushes for a $144 and 2 touchdowns. And I mean, who knows on punt returns, kick returns, whatever they decide to throw that guy in for. He is the fastest guy I've ever seen in the NFL. I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody can come up with somebody as fast, but he has stunning speed. He's been talking trash with Usain Bolt recently about a 70-yard matchup, which I would certainly watch. By the way, those numbers for Tyreek put him as your wide receiver 2 on the big board, but actually number 1 on your projections. You actually have him with slightly better numbers than Davante Adams. The real question is the second guy. Right now you have it as Mecole Hardman, wide receiver 49, 54 on the big board, putting up 58 catches, 800 yards, 6 touchdowns on 90 targets. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it started with the big man at the top. Real quick on him, like it seems like there's nothing else that you really need to say about Tyreek because of how explosive he is. We all know that. But I do want to point out the second half of last year, from I believe it was week 9 onward, he saw almost 11 targets per game. Now, that was because of injuries around him and whatnot, but he had more targets per game than Davante Adams and everybody else in the NFL as well over that span. And we saw, 19 target, 18 target, 15 target game. And we saw 50-point days, 35-point days. If that volume stayed steady all year coming into this year, like there's a ceiling to Tyreek that somehow we haven't seen yet. You'd think we've already seen it all, but we haven't. And that's why I have him ranked up there, as you said, in half PPR, higher than Adams. In full PPR, he's just a few below Adams, given how much more he catches the ball. But it is neck and neck. They're kind of in a tier and a class by themselves. Alongside, I guess you can work in Stephon Diggs there too, as the only guys I would consider in round 1 at the wide receiver position. There is just, like I was saying, there's just definitely some upside with Tyreek Hill that we might not have even seen yet, which seems so crazy. But yeah, Hardman is my bet right now to be number 2. A lot of people's bet. We had Nate Taylor on our podcast, the Athletics chief reporter, saying Hardman looks like a new receiver, both in how he's practicing, just maturity, the way he's picked it up, but also in his route running, a more diverse tree. Thing is he's kind of been interchangeable with Byron Pringle so far this preseason. Last game, preseason week 2, was certainly more encouraging to see him in there in all, both 11 and 12 personnel usage, but we also didn't have Tyreek Hill on the field, whereas the week before, Mecole Hardman wasn't working in for those snaps. So I still think it's a little bit of a clusterfuck there. Like, I don't know that we'll get anything truly consistent beyond Tyreek Hill. And, of course, the next guy we discuss in a second, Travis Kelce, and how much more he needs to say about that guy. But it's still worth a stab. It's a aerial pie led by Mahomes. And if anything ever did happen to Tyreek, someone's going to have to step up and be his number 1 receiver. I think it'd be Hardman, but I'm starting to really warm up to Pringle, who had 4 catches, 60 yards, and just a half of action with Mahomes in this last preseason game. Just so reliable, always open, great on the broken plays. Mecole Hardman goes about 6 rounds, more expensive than Byron Pringle. So to me, I've actually found myself having a lot more Byron Pringles on my team, even if I think Hardman is the more exciting bet. Pringle's cost has led me to him a lot more these days.
All right, real quick, we're going to go to Kelce. And, again, there's not a ton to say about him, but we'll say it anyway. 103 catches, 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns on 147 targets. That's the same you got Tyreek getting, and that is good enough for tight end 1 on both of your lists. I want to just give you some auction values. At the auction I had on Thursday, this is one auction. I just want to tell you how much some of these Chiefs went for, and interested to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I'd love
to. So Mahomes went for $36.
Too much for a quarterback,
of course I know that, but I mean, the next highest guy was, I want to say, $20 or $18. So to spend 36 on Mahomes, you actually have to think he's going to put up literally double the stats of Josh Allen. That's insane. We agree.
Right.
Tyreek went for 57.
Pretty fair.
And Kelce went for 56.
And I have Kelce higher on my big board than Tyreek. So of those guys, I prefer Kelce the most because of how big of an edge he is, right? Like, I think he had 70 more points than Darren Waller, who had a breakout season, massive season as a tight end too. He had like 150 more than the tight end 6. It's insane how big of an edge this guy gives you, right? Like, ridiculous.
Clyde went for 42 for whatever it's worth.
That's a little too much for me. That's a little too rich for my blood.
Yeah, me too. Anyway, talk about, blow smoke up Kelce's ass for a few seconds.
Right. You don't need me to do too much longer than that. 5 straight years as the tight end 1, hasn't missed a game over that span. Knock on wood, don't want to jinx the guy. But truly, unlike Tyreek, I guess the only fault, and it's not really a fault, is I think last year was his ceiling. And I'm not saying he can't repeat that. Whereas Tyreek still has a level that we might not have seen. But what else do you need to see with Kelce? 1,400 yards, 15 touchdowns from your tight end is fucking insane, given how bad and barren the positional landscape typically is. So, yeah, to me, he's worth anything top 6. I would not – if he falls below 6, you should be scooping him up in every single draft. If you took him as high as number 1, I honestly wouldn't give you too much grief. I think McCaffrey is certainly worth the first overall pick. But the edge that you get with Kelce, you can make that case for. And there's just the highest possible floor. You have Mahomes, the best quarterback in the game. You have a guy who has not missed any time and has been the number 1 tight end in 5 straight years. What else do you need?
We're way past the prove it part. Right. He's proven it.
He's unbelievable.
All right, let's get into the Raiders. Man, this is a shit pile.
It sure is.
Except for Waller.
Let me pull these guys up. What's funny, Matt, is before we get into them, I remember because we started this about 5 years ago, and I think it was the last time Kelce wasn't. It was his second or third year, and people
hated him. So we hated Kelce.
They were like, "This guy is Zeus out there." I remember they called him Zeus specifically.
Yep.
And I was like, "Zeus, you fucking asshole!" And then look good. 5 years later, 5 straight tight end 1 seasons. After me flipping out about them calling him Zeus, and clearly the guy is tight end Zeus. It's insane.
Oh yeah, I mean,
it just makes me laugh how far
we're not going to be using any of those clips on our pitch videos.
No,
talking about Travis Kelce sucks. He's so overrated.
It's more so because we hated him as a person too.
No, that did factor into it a lot. I admit it. Yeah, we mocked him. You had a Kelce voice.
Right. Yeah.
Right, that was it. There you go. All right, let's get into the Raiders. Derek Carr. Man, this is a team I want nothing to do with, like I said, other than Waller. I mean, every now and then we get to a team, I'm like, this has got to be the worst one. This might be, man. I don't know. Derek Carr, 375 for 557, 4,600 yards and change, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks, getting no real competition from backup Mariota, according to your projections. Good enough for your QB 18 based on the projections. I'm actually surprised he's even that high.
Yeah, it's just one of those blah picks that you're never going to want to make. No one's going to certainly be upset that you took Carr from him. Last year, Marcus Mariota put up over 30 points in 3 quarters of action. I really kind of wish they'd go to him at one point or another because he was exciting with his legs and everything.
He stinks, man.
But he's no good either. Yeah, Carr is just like a blah. He's going to do what he's going to do. He has a couple decent weapons around him, but you're never going to be excited. A fair guy to balance out a riskier Trey Lance, Justin Fields while you're waiting. But as we said, we like Fitzpatrick more. We like Kirk Cousins more. And there's going to be another quarterback I talk about in a little bit later on our big board risers and fallers, Zach Wilson, Nat. Yeah, I don't know if you have any. Have you been watching this kid? The ball is flying out of his arm to his receivers. So he's another guy I'm going to be bumping above Derek Carr. It's just, I guess in a 2-quarterback league, there's a point to own him. But in single quarterback leagues, we've seen the ceiling. The floor is okay, but it's certainly nothing that you're going to want to put in your lineup week to week.
No, that's all I have to say about Derek Carr. All right. Running backs, man. Ugh.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs, 240 for 984, 10 touchdowns. I mean, that actually sounds like not a bad stat line. Then you got Kenyan Drake, 165, 665 touchdowns. You got him splitting carries out of the backfield, maybe a 60-40 clip in favor of Jacobs. Although you don't love either of these guys' yards per carry, you do like Drake a lot more as a receiver, which I guess is why their value is as close as it is. You got Jacobs as your RB 27 on projection and Drake as your 26.
Yeah, which when that comes out to it, it seems like absolute chaos. I don't think it's going to be that close, but it is the receiving work, especially in PPR leagues, that's really going to separate him. Jacobs, everything could go wrong for Jacobs has gone wrong this offseason. They dismantle an offensive line that was in the top 10 of last year. I still don't understand that. Yeah. They signed Kenyan Drake, who was 4th in goal line attempts last year, 3rd to only Josh Jacobs. Something has to give there. I can't imagine it's just a clear cut. Jacobs is our guy when they have another pretty good goal line back there. I do that, as you can see, 10 touchdowns for Jacobs at the stripe. He is my preferred option as a rusher. But losing that receiving work, not that he was getting peppered, but 30-ish catches, 50-ish targets, losing that to Kenyan Drake is going to destroy his value, in my opinion. He saw the 3rd most touches among running backs, yet only finished just as a fringe RB1 at RB12 last year. Now he's got another guy nibbling at his receiving cheese behind a worst offensive line, and he's still going in rounds like 4. Jacobs is on my do not draft list. Based on these projections, I guess I should have Drake on a lot more teams than I do. I might be a little bit bullish on this receiving upside of him. I think a lot of that I'm going to probably bump that down just a little bit because of some of these receivers we're going to talk about, specifically Bryan Edwards has become much more impressive recently in camp. So I'll probably be bumping Drake down just a little bit. But either way, I'm certainly avoiding Jacobs at his round 4 price tag. Maybe Drake if he falls like round 10 or 11 and I don't have more than 2-3 running backs, I'll take a stab at. But it is gross. It's gross. I don't want anything to do with this backfield as a whole.
All right, well, let's keep getting gross. Let's talk wide receivers. So you got your Ruggs, Edwards, Renfro, 1, 2, 3 punch.
Deadly.
Henry Ruggs, 56. I hope my numbers are still right on this. 56 grabs, 935 yards, 5 touchdowns. Bryan Edwards, 50 catches, 730, 4 touchdowns. You did mention that you've been impressed by him lately.
Yeah,
anyway, you got
6 touchdowns lately.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's been.
Well, I mean, honestly, that's not an insignificant jump. I mean, that's a lot given what he had. Right. Ruggs, it's good enough for your wide receiver 46. Edwards, you had at 68. I'm assuming he's higher than that now, being that you've bumped up his touchdowns a couple. And then you got Renfro in there, taking up space. This is not a very good wide receiver core on your big board. I think last I saw you had Ruggs 49, Edwards 58.
Yeah, and mostly because this offense runs through Darren Waller, as we know, and we're going to talk about him in a second. Yep. There is the case that either of these guys could be breakouts, and certainly at their price tags. If I'm getting Raiders on my team, it's either Waller in round 2. I don't hate taking stabs at these receivers. One, Ruggs has that speed that's right towards Tyreek Hill level. It just hasn't panned out yet for him. Last year was obviously a disaster after he was the first rookie taken in this really deep loaded class. He fell flat on his face. But I do think there's some upside. He added 13 pounds of muscle to really help him get off the brakes. That's what really killed him. We talked about him with Ted Wynn on that Film Fantasy podcast. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already. That guy's a genius. But Ruggs does, I think, bring a little bit more to the table. As you see, 95 targets for your number 1 receiver isn't that much. And 84 for Edwards, who's actually been getting the steadier amount of hype. Derek Carr comparing him to Javonte Adams, his ex-college teammate, and how violently he runs his routes, how he goes up and gets it in red zone drills. We saw some of that hype last year that he got hurt and just never fully got himself back. So I don't know how much I'm buying into that either. But at their prices, round 11 or so for Ruggs, around 13, 14 or so for Edwards. One or two of them, if Carr has played well in the past. I mean, you were the one lobbying for like MVP. He
deserved it that year.
He killed it, right? So we've seen a high level of play from him before. Maybe you could sustain a couple breakouts. I wouldn't bet on more than one of them breaking out, and I like Edwards as the cheaper option. But yeah, I found myself drafting a bit of Ruggs and Edwards because there are some intriguing talents and a pretty wide open depth chart outside of Darren Waller, who we'll transition to now.
All right, let's talk Waller. Big numbers here. 104 catches, 1248, 10 touchdowns. Last time I looked, that's on 145 targets, making him by far the biggest target hog on the team. That was good enough for your tight end 2 projection-wise and on your big board. And just for an interesting frame of reference, if you're drafting, which I'm sure almost everybody, actually everybody watching this is, whether it's an auction or a snake draft, Waller went for $28 in my auction draft, literally exactly half of what Kelce went for. I mean, Kelce's the best. I'm not saying Kelce's worth $56, but if he is, Waller's certainly worth 28 or more.
Oh yeah, Waller should go for 40s. Like that was a steal.
He's undervalued, right?
Yeah. And that happens a lot of tight ends in auctions, I've noticed, as they go cheaper than they should, other than the main guy like Kelce. Yeah, he's flash and whatnot. And then if the other guys sneak in late, they'll go for way cheaper than they should. Waller, definitely. That's way too cheap for a tight end. I'm projecting for 26% market share for 145 targets. What's to say about this guy? He is such a freak athlete. He can do it after the catch. He can do it in the red zone. He's just a dominant target hog who has a clear, strong rapport with Derek Carr, who is the offensive coordinator, is clearly not afraid to dial up as the main vein in a division that they're going to need points in many, many weeks. So, yeah, I like Darren Waller a ton. He's above Kittle, and I think a lot of people have started to do that. Earlier in the preseason, it was always Kittle number 2. I think a lot of people have woken up to Waller being that much clearer of a target hog. But yeah, I love Waller as a round 2 investment, especially if you have like a McCaffrey, a Dalvin Cook. You got your locked in bell cow, and you don't like the receivers. Let's say DK and Jefferson are gone, and like another Terry McLaurin will be there in round 3 for you. I love getting that edge at tight end in round 2.
He and Waller did go for $4 more than Kittle did in our draft.
Those are some cheap values for those tight ends, though. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they were. Looking back, kind of wish I had gone for one of those guys.
Yeah.
Let's see. But I got tight ends really, really cheap at the bottom. Anyway.
Yeah. Higbee for $1, right? Like $2.
I got Higbee for $1, and I told you I got it for $1 by accident, who I'm going to be trying to trade.
Perfect. Good luck.
Yeah, I know, right? Big market for him. LA Chargers, last but not least. We're going to start with Justin Herbert, 419 completions, 659 attempts, a little over 4,600 yards, 33 touchdowns, 15 picks. These are truly huge fantasy numbers for such a young guy. You like him considerably more on the big board than your projections suggest he should be, above the likes of Aaron Rodgers, for instance, which I think I probably disagree with. You got him projected as your QB 11, but you like him 6 on the big board. That's
kind of crazy. He comes out as my QB 11 with this massive of numbers. And I think, again, it goes to show the rushing upside. He did have 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns last year. He is a plus athlete. I do think I need to bump up some of those rushing stats. I feel awesome about Herbert, though. I mean, 660 pass attempts would be second in the league, according to my projections right now. The guy's got a cannon arm. And now Josh Palmer is emerging as a nice, viable number 3, one of the only things they were lacking in terms of weaponry. There's not much to say. I really love what he showed as a rookie. Thought he went toe-to-toe with some of the best in the game and showed a real moxie, real drive, no fear going deep. They bring in the offensive coordinator, Joe Lombardi, who played quarterbacks coach for the Saints, coached the quarterbacks over at the Saints. So obviously it's a pass-happy scheme that knows how to get the most out of Drew Brees and all these other guys. I think Herbert's just going to sling all over the yard. He's going to be a beast. So yeah, maybe the projections, because of the lack of rushing upside, don't favor him. And I got to start maybe adjusting my big board because of that. But still, I could see this guy, under 5K right now. I might have to be bumping these numbers up in a little bit, because I really think he could absolutely throw for 5,050 TDs, well within his reach. So in round 8, 9, where he's going, all day long.
This is why I like the projection and the big board thing, because I feel like it shows what you really want to believe. You like Herbert more than your 11th quarterback. There's no question.
I sure do.
I like him a lot more. And, is that too high? Is that too low? No, we won't know until the season. But the fact is, you're enamored with this guy.
100%.
All right, let's go on to Austin Eckler. Another guy, that is shaping up to have a pretty good year. It looks like 241 carries, a little less than 1,100 yards, only 5 touchdowns on the ground, but adding 78 catches on 101 targets for another 624 and 4 touchdowns. And in a slight Chargers pattern here, your gut seems to be, not necessarily 100% in line with your projections. You've got him as your RB6 projection wise, I believe, but 9 on your big board.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they keep talking about we want to use multiple backs. We want to keep our playmakers fresh. So I've started to bump him down just a little bit in the rankings, as you said, RB9, whereas he projects out so highly because of that receiving workloads. They got 106 targets, 87, almost 800 through the air, and 7 touchdowns there. That's where you're getting your real money and gravy paid, because they're comparing him to Kamara. They're saying this is going to be the Kamara-style role. So that's why I have Kamara-style stats here, because not that I think Eckler's quite on Kamara's level. I don't think he's horribly far off, though, either. I think he really is a studly player. So a lot of people, especially in standard leagues, he takes a bit of a hit. But overall, around 1,600 total yards and 11 TDs or so, when you combine it all, he's going to be a beast. I really love Eckler in this scheme, just as a player, in a whole. So I'm thinking he's going to have his best year of his career, and that's including 2 years ago when he was the RB4 in PPR. I think he can beat those numbers with even higher usage now this year.
All right, we got a legitimate target hog that obviously, and some of the numbers I believe may have changed, especially on their wide receiver too, since I put these in. So correct me where I need to be corrected. I got mixed feelings on Keenan Allen. I know you do too. For the guy really hosed us last year.
Yeah,
let's be honest. He caused us to give out one of our most damning pieces of advice of the entire year, probably. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can ever really forgive him for that. But I believe the numbers I have for Allen right now for last I saw 121 catches, a little over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns on a whopping, I believe I had 175 targets. That's nuts. Is that close to what you still have?
Yeah, 178 targets would be second in the NFL.
Okay.
Projected. Yeah, so right there. Yeah.
Which was good enough. I mean, honestly, projection-wise, I feel like I think it was only good enough for your wide receiver 13, actually, believe it or not, and wide receiver 10 on the big board. Mike Williams, you've got as the clear number 2. I do think my numbers for him are a slightly outdated. I got 63 catches, 945, 10 touchdowns on 108 targets.
That's right.
Okay, never mind. Nothing outdated about that. That's good enough for 41 on your projection board, 35 on the big board. Maybe he should be higher than that. I don't know. What do you think? What is the reason you're not higher on Keenan Allen? Just because you're pissed at him still?
A little bit, but honestly, just kind of his role. Yes, I mean that was infuriating. Start me. He yells at the camera, only to ruin fantasy playoffs in our advice show,
right.
For sure. But it's one of those things where the volume is certainly going to be there. He was averaging the second most targets in the league in his healthy games, behind only Javonte Adams last year. So I think that's going to still be there for sure. Just a matter of a lot of those targets are complete dink dunk variety, moving the chains. If you have a third rewards for first down points, that's going to favor a guy like Keenan Allen. But he's not a big red zone monster. That's why Mike Williams has a higher touchdown projection here with 10. So I think that's what kind of caps his ceiling is there'll be a ton of the volume. It's just not the most productive of volume. It's just kind of churning, and that's great. It's kind of like a souped up Edelman, those kind of slot receivers for the Patriot type of role. Such a good chain mover, so good real life. There's not a route this guy can't run, but in terms of just like those 50, 60-yard bombs or those big touchdowns in the red zone, he just doesn't offer that. And that's okay. That's fine. He's a great wide receiver 1 to get in round 3, but just there's there's offenses there's players, you give them 178 targets at a different offense with a different skill set, they could light the world on fire. That's just not Keenan Allen for me.
All right, you did, before we move on to tight end, you had a slight movement there for your wide receiver 3, Palmer.
Yeah, I think it's big. I mean, he's got 7 catches on 7 targets so far this preseason, 1 touchdown, right around 40 yards. Nothing crazy stats-wise, but he has been the go-to guy with these other guys resting and getting themselves healthy or just not playing in the preseason. Palmer's really shown out well. And I do think the 3 in an offense where I think 5,000 yards and 50 TDs through the air are very realistic. That's obviously going to have some value, especially when you consider Williams' injury history. Palmer could easily ascend to the number 2 here. We saw Tyrone Johnson last year when Keenan Allen got hurt become a very viable weekly threat. And now Josh Palmer's clearly outplaying this guy throughout preseason, throughout camp. He's like a dog. He stays after practice and works on his deep routes every day with Justin Herbert, to the point they've had to get on a megaphone and yell to them, get on the bus, it's leaving. You guys are gonna have to walk home from practice because I like that type of player, just always trying to get better, always in the coach's ears, always in Keenan Allen's ear, just like, how can I do this drug differently? You like to see that type of player, and most of them are when you get to the NFL level. That's what it takes to get there, but you still love reading those reports. So I'm getting big on this guy. He's a great last round stab in my opinion, because if and when something happened to Allen or Williams, I think one of those two has gotten hurt for a significant stretch of time every single year. I think a number 2 for this offense could be a monster. So I really like Palmer as a guy that's rising up the projections in big board these days.
All right, last but not least, I messed up a little bit writing down projections for this guy. I realized half the projections I wrote down were for somebody I was researching on another team. But anyway, Jared Cook, you've got as their top tight end. You got him 14th on your big board, so very borderline starter, maybe slightly outside in most leagues. You got him receiving for almost 800 yards and getting 8 touchdowns, and I believe he was somewhere in the 90 target range.
Yep, 92 targets. Good memory there. Okay. You still got it over there, Truth. Yes. But no, I really like Cook. I mean, he's second in touchdowns across the last 3 seasons with the Saints, behind only Kelce and Mark Andrews tied at the top there. So I guess third, but still that's solid touchdown production. from the Saints. Joe Lombardi comes over, make sure his guy comes with him. I like all those trends. I like all those signs. And again, if 50 touchdowns are realistic for Justin Herbert, I think a 6'5" monster that's always been good in the red zone is a good bet. The only thing that has me a little down on him is Donald Parham is showing out in camp. The XFL legend, whopping 6'8" beast that can move, is apparently moving all over the line, all over the formation, scoring and dominating in red zone drills as you'd expect a 6'8" monster to do. So if I miss on Cook, I really like taking stabs in my last round best ball drafts on this Donald Palmer guy. Again, Cook is like 34 now, so he might just be Jared Cooked. Like he could be done at that age. And if he is, and if he gets hurt, Parham would be a weekly top 8 tight end. So I really like taking stabs on both of these guys as big red zone threats in an offense I think could really push for a ton of touchdowns. But if you miss on Cook, don't be afraid to take a little swing at Donald Parham with your last round either.
All right, that does it for the first day of the AFC. We're 5 out of 8 episodes done. That's the AFC West. Tomorrow we are going to be hitting the AFC East. It's another one where there's some good and some bad and some ugly going on there.
A lot ugly.
But we're gonna hit the mailbag. We've had some comments as the show's been going on. A lot of the regulars and some other guys as well. So we're gonna see what you guys have to say, and hopefully we can help you guys out. Bailey Fields, what do you think about Kyle Pitts? Is he a good pickup in my 8-man league? I hope he doesn't bust.
I think he's a great stab at upside. Yeah, especially in an 18 league though. I would really be going for Kelce or Waller. Like there's very few ways to separate in an 8-teamer because everyone's
awesome, right?
Like at every position. So you want to think, okay, where's the biggest way you can gain separation? It's getting bell cow backs. It's getting a great tight end, potentially even like a Mahomes at quarterback. But I would be trying to get Kelce, 2 great running backs. And sure, Pitts definitely has a ton of upside. Like go for it. But I would try to get a more elite tight end in that reduced of a format for sure. So yes, I think he's a good pickup because Pitts is a great freak of nature, but I don't think I'd rather have a higher end tight end if I'm going in an 8-team league.
Mitch, what's up?
What up?
Yo.
What's up, guys? All the regulars here. Go Kansas City Chiefs. Mitch actually texted me before we went live. Great to hear from you, Mitch. Saying he's excited for this division, especially. Hopefully, we didn't disappoint with his Chiefs. Clearly, we expect a lot.
We showered them with adoration, right? Craig Sarno, what's up, boys? What's up, Craig?
My man, Craig. Great to see some of the regulars.
Seamus,
a legend from the shadows here.
Seriously, hey, Seamus, what's up? We missed you.
Nice.
We got to work Seamus into one of our shows during the season, just a regular section, segment.
We have a great comment coming up, by the way, Nat. I can't wait for you to see this one.
I love great comments. All right, Mitch Chavez. Jeudy's route running is incredible. I see him as their number 1, as well as getting his as my wide receiver 3 or 4 in many leagues for depth.
Yeah, so you're in agreement with me, Mitch. It's just such a pure route runner that, he had some drops last year. I'm very willing to forgive it and see what he does this year. An offense that should be pretty wide open target-wise. It's just a matter of who's throwing the rock. I would love to see Teddy Bridgewater, though, those timing routes and whatnot. It would be tough to stop given how good he is, Jeudy, and how accurate Teddy Bridgewater is on those routes. I'm really fingers crossed for Jeudy that Bridgewater wins this battle.
Mahmoud wants to know Hockenson or Andrews with most of the receivers in Baltimore being hurt. I would still lean towards Hockenson, but I understand why you're asking.
Yeah, I do lean Hockenson, Mom, but that is worth a good point bringing up that, like, everyone is hurt there. They've been hurt for a while. So who do you think Lamar's going to go to when the going gets tough? It's definitely going to be Andrews. But I have quite a bit more faith in Hawkinson's target share. Like there is no one around him. Other people will be coming back around Andrews. There's nobody coming back to compete with Hockenson. And I think the lines are going to suck a bit more. So they're going to chuck a bit more as well. So give me Hockenson, but Andrews might get a little tick up even closer to him in my big board though, for sure. Here's my favorite comment of the day.
Gimli, son of Gloin, would like us to use his face as our toilet seat. But both of us, one of us.
That's what I was wondering. Who do you want to be?
Who do you want to piss on you?
And are we pissing? Are we shitting? Like what are you into, Gimli? Like give us the details here.
Thanks for the offer.
But yeah, we'll gladly use your face as a toilet seat.
Charlie Prebs. I'm a little late, but I'm here. Sup, guys? What's up, Charlie? Better late than never. And you look like you weren't really that late, but.
No, you're here as you are every day. Love to see it.
Mitch says Brown needs to start looking better. The rest have been rather solid on that line. Surprisingly, he's talking about the KC line, of course.
Yeah, and that's the biggest of the acquisitions, Mitch, at left tackle, and I can see why. That's a big transition. I don't know if they're. You tell me, Mitch. Are they keeping him at right? That's where he came over. Are they trying him out at left? Because that could be part of it too. A big positional adjustment. Let us know how that's going.
Hail Mahomes from Mitch.
Yeah.
Mitch is very on brand. Very on brand today.
The god there.
Toon says, hey, guys, I'm picking sixth night in a PPR league. I think I'm taking Javonte Adams. If someone like Diggs or Hill fall to me in round 2, that'd be awesome if they did. Would you consider taking them, or do I have to go running back?
I think that's a case where I can make my exceptions. You know me. I'm a bell cow breeder. I would love the pick of Adams at 6 there. And in what world do Diggs and Hill fall in a PPR league that late, Tunes? I think you're giving us a hypothetical.
I mean, that's talking about, you'd be picking 17, 18, something like that. Be pretty shocked if one of them was there.
I would be shocked. But if it does happen, absolutely. Like, don't just for the fact of getting a running back, take a running back. If one of those guys that should be going top 10 in a PPR league fall to you in round 2, yes, take them. You can get Swift, who's going to catch 70 balls. Later, you can get Chris Carson, David Montgomery. There's still running back talent throughout the 3rd and even early 4th. It does drop off hard, so you'd have to hammer that pretty tough. But that's the thing, too, in a PPR league, like James White in round 13 is going to be okay. Like, if you miss out on these studs, of course I love my bell cows, but in a PPR league especially, I think you can get away with going 0 RB if you miss out on those true horses.
Wolf loves his running backs, but, man, he loves his stars.
Yeah.
Just loves him. ML. I like Daryl Williams as the backup over McKinnon.
I think Daryl Williams is the clearer cut backup. Yeah. What I think I'm projecting
it's more the receiving work that you're pegging McKinnon for. That's
his own standalone value, right? It's not like I'm looking for a handcuff and that McKinnon's the direct backup and you need Helaire to get hurt. I'm saying I think McKinnon has a role from day one on this team and could get you a little bit of PPR points in the process.
Mitch says Gent has looked really solid so far. If he can remain healthy, he can be very good this year.
There you go, McKinnon.
Sure.
Some more McKinnon love coming out there.
Charlie Krebs, I got Kelce in the 2nd round this weekend.
What?
Wow.
That is insanity. He should not fall further than 7, as I said.
Who's
6 or 7.
First?
That is insane. I don't know what your team looks like, Prebz. If you haven't already, shoot me a DM, and I can't wait to see that. But yeah, Prebz, that is insane value to get Kelce in round 2 at this point.
When people send you teams and you get a good one, do you look at it the way you look at porn? Or the way that one would look at porn?
Yeah, I slap myself around as soon as I see a good team. Thanks for that roster. Yeah, I roster bait real hard. No, I can't really get off to other people's rosters quite like my own.
Well, sure.
But I do get excited. I do get a little bit of movement for sure when I see it.
But you get off like if you have a good roster, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like this real. After I drafted my auction, I was like lying in bed that night just real pleased with myself.
Yeah. Snuck over to the bathroom for a quick shower.
Just kind of turned one direction, right? Mitch says facts, the truth. Thank you. I love it when I'm given credit for facts about Jet. That's why I stated if he actually stays healthy. LOL. Right. That's been the rub. Right.
Absolutely.
I was talking about Tyreek being the fastest guy I'd seen, and then Mitch's next comment says only Hester or Dante Hall seem to have a similar shiftiness to Hill. Shiftiness, maybe just brute speed, just fastest guy. I've never seen someone as fast as Hill.
And that's what makes him so deadly, though, Naz. He has that speed, but he has what Mitch is saying, that stop and get to the next direction. Like, that's what's so scary about him. Is it's not just he has top end speed; it's how fast he can get to that top end speed that you're just like,
he accelerates like it's crazy to watch.
And off the line too, like as Mitch is saying, that shiftiness to get away from defenders so he can hit that top speed. It's just he's got to be one of the freakiest players in the league, like of all time. He's going to go down as one of those game changers with a game changing quarterback.
Charlie says Hill would be so deadly if Kelce was a normal tight end.
Yeah, right. Like if he was seeing almost like Javonte Adams 200 targets, like it would be crazy. It would be absolutely insane.
Mitch says I agree on the receivers in KC. Hardman, Pringle, and Robinson being there in the mix can be a bit chaotic. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Mitch
also says Zeus Kelce needs to grow his beard out though. LOL, looking like he's a rookie again.
I think I dropped him at least one spot in the ranking. No, I agree, though. He looks weird without a beard. I don't like it at all. Like, give me that swag back. I need the beard back.
Charlie Preb said the Raiders are wasting Jacobs. They never use him right.
It sucks because I do think he is a solid player. I don't think he's an amazing player, but he was a good receiver in college. Why haven't they given him a fair amount of receiving work? I don't know. I don't get it. Yeah, they're never going to use him as a bell cow. Last year was the closest it was ever going to be. They used him as a bell cow last year, and he still was only the running back 12 because of lack of receiving work. It's not for me. He's not my guy.
Fred Henry, can Edwards get off press coverage?
Couldn't really well last year. I think it's a really good point, Fred, but I do think he wasn't playing healthy all last year, and I think you can give that excuse to everybody that didn't play up to their potential. Oh, they weren't at 100%. But I'm willing to give it another shot because it only cost you a round 14 pick. The guy is big and strong, and he had no trouble with press coverage in college, Fred. So I'm ready to see round 2. Let's see what he does. At the price tag, I'm ready to get hurt again if need be, for sure.
Mike Clay says, I got pick 7 in a draft today, torn between going Aaron Jones or Javonte. Thoughts? And he does say 2 comments down that it's a PPR league.
Mike, where the fuck have you been? Last summer, you were spending like 3 shows a day with me. This is, I think, the first time I've seen you, Mike.
I haven't seen Mike in a while either.
He was always at the after episode party. Like, where's this guy been, Mike? The hell? You think I'm going to answer your question? No, of course I'm going to.
I know you gotta lead in with like a preamble. Hey guys, I missed you. You're just going right in, asking for info, and we're going to give it to you.
Last time Denny Jennings freaking missed time, it turns out he like got a stray bullet.
He got shot.
He had a fucking reason.
What's your excuse?
No, but it's great to see you. Either way, I'm happy you're back, Mike. I have 7.5 PPR league, and I'm still going Javonte in a full. I would definitely be going Javonte. I think that last dance narrative, I buy into it. I think him and Rodgers are going to just be – the guy saw 20 goal line targets last year. It was the most since Randy Moss in like 2001. Insanity. This guy is automatic at the stripe. He's a target hog. There's nothing else to it. I love bell cows as well, Mike, but I got to go Javonte.
I would go Adams, and for whatever it's worth, I would also take Hill over Jones if he was available.
I would as well, yeah, and especially in a PPR league, I'd go Hill. And if Kelce's there and Adams is gone, I'd go Kelce over Hill or Jones as well.
All right. Samuel says, do you think I should be worried about DK Metcalf's schedule and Russell Wilson's schedule because it's pretty hard?
I don't think so. I factor strength of schedule in at times, like in true shutdown corner moments, but that just doesn't really exist too often in the NFL. Jalen Ramsey, sure, a very good shutdown corner, will probably trail DK, those 2 matchups they have. But overall, I'm not overemphasizing it. I think that division, if anything, if the Seahawks offense under Shane Waldron can hit the ceiling, I think is realistic for him, that's going to be a lot of shootouts in that division. And the 49ers have a potential juggernaut at Trey Lance is what I think. A lot of ifs, as you can hear me continue to ramble here. But with Arizona, they have a shitty defense and a great offense. The Rams put up points with Stafford. I think we're just going to get a division with a lot of points. So I'm not avoiding that division at all, even though there's a couple of good defenses in there.
Agree. Mike Schneider, my draft over the weekend, the running backs went very quick in the first 3 rounds. I think
your arc was the same way, Truth. Like you got Ridley for the same price as like David Montgomery. I don't get that shit.
I got Ridley for
like $35 or so, right?
35, yeah,
insane. And I don't get it. Like fantasy points are fantasy points. It doesn't matter what position they come from. I understand, and I'm a bell cow breeder. I have been for anybody who's been following forever because a true top 15 running back that gets 3-down work is by far the most valuable asset in fantasy. But I think there's only about 15 or so of them. So once those guys are gone, like I don't see the obsession on just loading up at running back after running back after running back. Like after that Chris Carson, David Montgomery line, which is still teetering on that line, it drops off dramatically. So I don't hate going running back either. But there's just so much good, like whether it's Kelce and Waller getting that edge at tight end, these wide receiver target hogs, like you're passing up on a lot of good value if running backs are just getting poured out, like they often do. I don't know. I just feel like hometown leagues, it's always running back heavy. Everybody's always on this hunt. At the end of the day, I think you can take advantage of that and go the opposite way. It zag while all these other people are zigging.
My hometown league was definitely running back heavy, but they also I think Aaron Rodgers went for like $24. So
yeah,
it's not the most savvy league in the world. Mahmoud says there was an injury popping out for Hawkinson. No concern there.
if it's, I don't know how recent it is. I know there was something like a week ago that was very minor. Something new has popped up. I'll maybe have to dive into that. But as of right now, I have no concern. Mohammed, is there a new injury? Could you give me a little more info? Because I could have missed it. So just let me know.
Mitch says Gimli's wanting that OBJ treatment.
OBJ getting the Cleveland Steamers off the chest. Yeah. Getting dumped on with piss and shit. Like, yeah, Gimli wants them both. He wasn't discriminating when he asked for his face to be a toilet seat. He wants it all.
Greedy. Kendall Black.
RSJ writer over there. Good legend. Kendall.
Coming in from Periscope, too. When drafted in a keeper league, do you focus more on roster construction or the best player available?
Great question. I would say it is obviously a balance of both. I think for both keeper and regular formats. I do think in dynasty leagues, especially, like given that like they just become such big trade assets down the line, it's much more about best player available than team need or roster construction in that, because you just have this lateral, the movement of the value, the fluidity of that. But you got to obviously keep both in mind, right? Like you have like 4 running backs in the first 4 rounds and you haven't filled out the rest of your roster. That third one's not going to help you. It's not going to help you. So a little bit of both, but less so roster construction focused in a dynasty league. You remember, like, truth, a good conversation I had was when Michael Liu was reviewing our draft, and you had like Mac Jones, I think, right, in like round like 16. And at that point, I was like, I already have 3 quarterbacks. That's the perfect time, especially when you have a full roster, to just maximize those really valuable positions. Like Mac Jones should have gone 5 rounds later, given how much in a year or two his value is going to be a top 4 rounder potentially. So yeah, especially towards the later rounds, I'm going for best player available, best long tail value. And the bigger thing to me is this guy's value towards an upwards trajectory, or is it a guy that could come crashing down pretty quickly, or is already towards going to his lowest value? So I always look for more so who's ascending is the bigger question I ask.
Mitch says, I believe LT Nyang at right tackle at the moment.
Okay, so he's saying he thinks Brown's at the left tackle and Nyang's at the right tackle. So that could be part of it with him transitioning to a new position with Brown.
Charlie said Brown wanted out of Baltimore because he was playing right tackle. So I would hope they move him to the left, right?
I think so as well.
All right, Mitch Chavez, Brown and Thuney on that left side should in theory be very damn solid, though. We shall see.
Whew. Could be a beastly line if Brown pans out.
Mike Clay telling us what's up right now. Oh, wait, never mind. Charlie Prebs, I sent you a DM, Wolf, and I got Cook in round 1. I'm in a standard league.
Okay. Gotcha. Wow. Right. Cook and Kelce? I mean, that's a pretty fucking crazy.
All right. Mike giving some explanation. I live on the West Coast now. Timing's a little different. LOL. All right. Yeah, pretty much those are the only valid excuses. You either have to have moved to the West Coast or have been shot.
Okay, yeah. So I'm guessing you didn't live on the West Coast last year then. Yeah, you were shot. I'm hoping you haven't been shot, first of all.
Of course
not. And second, I'm guessing you weren't on the West Coast last year, because I remember you were a staple for the Wake and Bake show. Like when I was doing that last year. You'd be here at like 9 a.m. ready to the questions going, Mike Clay. So you must be this must be a new move for sure.
Adams is a bell cow, Charlie says. Yeah.
Like he truly is. He's like as a receiver, as close to a bell cow as you're going to get at receiver because of that goal line usage. Yes, absolutely.
All right, Mike, he's been catching the replay, boys.
Okay,
glad I can get on with you guys today. I'll be there for the Sunday and Monday shows. Don't worry, LOL.
I love to hear that they're still at least staying in tune. He was in Florida last year, and he's California.
Yeah. And
nice.
start talking us up on the West Coast. We could stand, a West Coast presence.
Spread that West Coast love, Mike. I wonder what brought you out there. What happened to move? What town are you in California? I was just out there this summer. I love California. So what is San Diego? Probably the best.
San Diego. I love some parts of California.
Yeah, the ones I've seen at least I loved. I'm sure
there's awesome.
Less slightly, but yeah, that was great.
All right, Mike says I ended up drafting Mahomes with pick 10 in the 3rd round, getting Allen Robinson pick 8 in the 4th round. I love that.
I mean, I would
probably. I mean, like if you could have gotten Mahomes in the 4th, probably better. But I mean, getting both those guys, that's
right. Like I think Allen Robinson at 310 is what I would have said you have to do. But the fact that you got him 4.8, like if you took Mahomes at 4.8, I would have said you got to steal. So, you flip those two things, and I can't judge it all. I think that's incredible, Mike. Why did Allen Robinson fall so far? I don't understand that at all. But yeah, wow, crazy.
Mike says I'm leaning Javonte too. I've been getting Gibson in the second and Waller in the third and mocks when I go that route.
If you get that would be a ridiculous start. I am hoping my draft goes exactly like you said in terms of Javonte and Gibson. I'm not expecting Waller to be there round 3. I more often see Kittle there, and I typically pass him up for an Allen Robinson, for a Terry McLaurin. But man, if he fell there in round 3, like that would be just an elite start right there, Mike Clay. Absolutely.
Fred says I had my first draft last weekend, drafted at the 7th spot. I got Adams in the 1st, Ridley in the 2nd, Carson 3rd, Dobbins 4th, Kupp 5th, Brady 6th, Harris in the 7th. I got to tell you, I don't love Dobbins, but man, those other guys are pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there too. Like if you're gonna go receiver, I think you followed it up really well. I think Dobbins, I'm not in love either, Nat, but round 4 is pretty fair. I only don't love him because he goes above Montgomery, he goes above Carson, he goes above even maybe DeAndre Swift in PPR leagues, which I think is just crazy. But you get him 4th after getting those 2 receivers. I could do that. And Kupp in the 5th. I mean, I have Kupp projected for top 10 numbers. Like that's an insane value right there. I think a little bit of a reach on Brady because I always wait on quarterbacks. But still, I agree. And Damian Harris gives you a nice 3rd potential for the stable. So I think you had a great start, Fred. I really like that team for sure.
All right. Mahmoud said Hawk suffered a lower body injury in practice. Does not seem serious. Then he says in his next August comment, 10th. It seems a bit old. August 10th it happened.
That's the one I think I already knew about. So yeah. I feel you there.
Mike, give us some background. He lived in Florida last year, California this year, Sacramento. He's an energy consultant in the solar industry.
Really cool. I didn't know that about you, Mike. Interesting job.
We would love to be sponsored by a solar-based company. So,
right,
you're our in, Mike.
There you go. Sponsors from the energy field.
Fred says it's a 12-team league. I figured.
That's a great squad right there for 12 teams. Alrighty, Wolfpack. Well, great seeing some of you guys that always show up every single time. Great seeing some legends reemerge. He's going to say Wolf is going to love how Preb says he's going to love how long I waited for QB. I cannot wait to see. I'll get on your DM right after we hang up here, Prebs. I look forward to seeing that as I always do. Looking forward to chatting with you in the DMs. But guys, thank you so much. Similar to Charlie, if you want to share your teams, you want to chat in the DMs, they're always open over there at Twitter, Roto Street Wolf. You can find me. All of our content is at rotostreetjournal.com. We breed and feed fantasy wolves. Thank you guys so much. If you haven't already given us the thumbs up, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, it helps us get out to more people. Consider sharing it with people you're not competing with so we can get out there. We appreciate you guys, again, regularly showing up or here for the first time. It means the world that you're willing to listen to our content there. So make sure you're finding the best of it over at rotostreetjournal.com or on the app as well. I think that's everything. And the Fantasy Fullback Dive, of course, where we pave your path to 2021 titles. If you prefer podcasts to videos, or if you're listening to the audio of this, thank you so much. Reviews and subscriptions are one of the fastest ways you guys can help us out. Turn on those notifications so you know when you're live and we can be live together and answer all your questions. All righty, Nat. I am the wolf.
I'm the truth.
In a world full of fantasy sheep, guys, be that wolf. Later,
guys. AFC East tomorrow. NFC East tomorrow. AFC East.
AFC East.
Yes.
AFC East. Yes. Love it.